Hey, so the next topic is RE framework. So if you're hearing it for the first time, no worries. I'll be taking you through all the introduction that is needed for you to understand about it and also the benefits because we don't learn anything for the sake of learning. We definitely need to know the benefits of it, right? So that's what we'll be learning soon. Going ahead, I'll just try to give you an introduction of what is RE framework. As you can see, right, so it has been introduced by UiPath itself for the processes that are being implemented in UiPath. We have to use RE framework and the reasons are very vast. Okay, the benefits of using RE framework will soon come to know. And it was introduced in late 2017. Before that, we always used to have our own kind of structures, our own kind of implementation methodologies and everything. But after that, what has happened is, because see, if you are a kind of developer and you don't have any consistency in your development, what happens is there's a team A in, say, company Apple and team B in company Amazon. So what happens, the developers here will have their own kind of structure where they actually don't follow any framework kind of thing, and the employees in the Apple company will have their own kind of framework. So whenever there is cross team happening in between, they'll find it difficult to understand where the particular project starts and where it ends. So it creates a lot of pain just to understand what exactly is happening inside the project. So that is what this RE framework will actually solve. So this will make the project robust and consistent. Consistent model is a keyword that you have to definitely understand because it will make or get all the developers into same framework which is consistent all over the process. So it will be easy for the organizations to handle larger automations also. Going forward, so these are the benefits that I was talking about, right? Apart from consistency in the model, it will also give us the reusability. What exactly do I mean by reusability? It actually works with any kind of data, okay? Because RE framework is independent of data source. You can start using Excel files as your input files, database as your input files, PDFs, emails, JSON responses, and even queue items. If you are new to this word queue, no worries, we'll soon be looking into that too. And then comes configuration file. What do you mean by configuration file? So whenever there is a development happening, okay, we maybe for the development phase, we might keep some values as hard coded. Maybe if my name is Sharath and my email ID is sharath@gmail.com, I might hard code that value during the development. But later when we have to pass it for testing, our UAT, our production, we have to make it configurable, right? You can't be changing the code every time. You have to make few parameters configurable. For that particular use, we can have a configurable file also here, which will be helpful to maintain our frequently changing files. By that I mean URLs, maybe file paths and other things. Okay. And then comes the main advantage, exception mechanism and retry facility. So it basically means that it will help us capture the exceptions that occurred at the transaction processing and allows us to re-execute them. Because see, if there is a particular transaction happening, we can't guarantee that it will happen in the single shot. We have to give a second chance for some of them. So that is where it will be helpful to us. And then comes easy debugging. Easy debugging is related to something that I've just discussed earlier, where because every developer will follow up this particular framework, so it would be easier for me to understand from where this particular emails are going to be sent and where exactly this applications are being launched at. All these stages I'm aware of. So at least in the given few seconds, if someone gives me a project and asks me to look at it, I'll be definitely able to handle it. So after that, logging. It generates logs at every transaction level. Suppose there are 5 steps happening: logging into LinkedIn, posting something maybe, or sending an email and logging out. All this will be captured as different stages, and it will definitely help us while debugging this particular thing. And then comes integration. Integration, as you know, this facility is really helpful because we are actually using different modules, maybe from other projects or other processes. We will be able to definitely integrate them with the current project that we might be working on. Yeah, so that was about the benefits of REFramework. Now let's try to understand its architecture, the architecture of REFramework. So what exactly is it and how it will look like? As you can see on the screen, there are only 4 components that you have to get familiar with. If you know them well, then that's done. Okay, you'll be able to create as many projects as you can using REFramework. It's that simple if you just understand the main components of it. Let's go through each of them. And one thing before we move on to this, right, I would just like to show you an example, real life example. Yeah, so just get yourself familiar with this example here. As you have seen, there are 4 components here, and I have tried to give an example for each component. Here, init, right, the first one, init. What do you exactly understand by init state? It should be something where something is being initialized, right? Yeah. So init state is nothing but, suppose if you take an example of banking process where there's a bank and there's an employee over there, okay, who comes every day, logs into the system and calls the customers, and the customers should pass through a watchman. Okay, we'll do all the checks and let them go inside the counter. So here they go, each one by one will be allowed to go into the counter, and then they create their account. If they create it successfully, they'll sing a song on their way. If not, they'll be really disappointed and they will go back, maybe come tomorrow by taking all the required documents, or may leave, or may opt for another bank. So that's what might happen. So let's go ahead and see this particular thing. Init is a place where the employee comes every day and try to launch the websites or the portals that are actually needed for the account creation. So everything happens here itself. And then, so this is what he's doing right here. He's trying to open all those applications and keep them ready. And then if the applications and everything is working fine and there is no network issues, then he will be moved to get transaction data. Else, if the applications is not working, then he will just call someone else and say there's an error and the bank will be closed for that particular day, or there might be some delay, right? So that is what will happen. So this is the end process. Assume that it's a good day and everything was working fine, so we'll be moved to get transaction data. So this is where the watchman comes up, and right now we are at watchman job. And exactly what will happen here is he will take a particular person, he will check, maybe perform some basic security check and allow that particular customer to go into the counter. So this is what the get transaction data will do. Okay, in real life this is a situation. Maybe you can consider an Excel file into which we have maybe 20 rows of data and we have to process each one of them. In this case, one single row is a person to us that will be allowed into the main process, okay, which is counter here in the example of banking, right? So this is done. Get transaction data, you can just consider it as watchman, which will actually allow the transactions to go one by one to the process transaction. Suppose if there are no customers on that particular day, get transaction data will tell there is no data and end the process. As we can see here, if watchman doesn't see anyone in the queue, I'll just say bank officer, there's no one who has come for the maybe account creation, so we can close up the bank. Yeah, so this is done. Get transaction data. The next thing is, so this part called process transaction is really an interesting part of the whole framework, because this is where the actual account creation process will happen. As you can see, process transaction is where it is being happening, right? So here the bank account, there are two scenarios, there are two chances. One where the account creation will be successful, or it might not be. It will be successful because all the needed checklist is done, and it might fail if the customer doesn't have the required documents, maybe an address proof or enough money to deposit or any criteria that they actually want to fulfill. So if it's not happening, let me go back to this. As you can see, there are different arrows pointing to different states again. Let's look at success. If it's a success case, then from process transaction it is going back to get transaction data. So it was asking the next customer to go inside the counter after the security check. And then you can see a new term maybe for you, which is business rule error. What do you exactly mean by business rule error? Business rule error is nothing but if a customer comes and maybe he doesn't have a valid address proof, okay, or he doesn't have a valid citizenship. In that case, he'll be sent back, and this can be taken as a business rule because the bank actually needs that details to open an account, and the customer wasn't able to satisfy that particular requirement. So it comes under business rule error. So it will go to get transaction data in this case also, and will ask for the next customer to go into the counter. Okay, even for success and the business, for both, it will be going back to the get transaction data. Now, if these two are not happening and there is an error, what does this error mean? The other bigger arrow that is pointing to the init state again. This error is also known as system exception. This occurs when the portal, okay, maybe in init state, right, at the start, the bank officer had checked for all the applications and asked the watchman to send some customers inside the counter, but suddenly the application didn't work. The portal where he actually creates an account didn't work. Bad day, maybe. And then what will he actually do? He can't do anything, right? He will just say the server is not working, I'll try to relaunch the server. So this is what is happening. So it is directly going to init state again in case of system not working or network issues or network error. So it will go to init state, it will try to repeat the whole process again. So if it's not working, again error, it will just end the process. If this error, which I mean system error, never happens for if 10 customers, it will be going through this particular loop, which is process transaction and then get transaction data and then process transaction and get transaction data. So once this is done, as get transaction data is a watchman, and assuming there were only 10 people today, very low count maybe, if all this are done and there are no one coming up, this particular arrow you can see no data will be executed, right? The process will end. So RE framework is really easy to understand if you give it some time and go through this explanation at least twice or thrice, because it's definitely a task to understand this particular RE framework if you're a beginner. Even I took some time, and even every developer, UiPath developer that you will come across would have definitely taken their own time to understand the functionalities of this. So don't be worried, don't be overwhelmed about the working functionality of this. It will take some time. So for this, right, we'll be going forward and we'll be implementing a lot of projects through which you'll be able to further understand the working functionality of this. So just keep this example in mind. So this will give you a good picture of what is RE framework and what exactly is happening inside it. We'll definitely be implementing some projects on this, which will definitely give you a lot of confidence. Great. So we are right here on the home page of UiPath, and here new from template, under this section we will find there would be an option called robotic enterprise framework. So this is what we mean by RE framework. So we can directly go over there and click on this particular option, and we'll start to install that template. We can give any name, maybe my first RE framework, maybe. Yeah. So after this, I'll just click on OK. So it will do all the setup that is needed for us to start working, as we do it with the other simple processes, right? So it will be in the same way. So this is done. Yeah, we are done with our setup. As we can see, we have the dependencies, the default dependencies right here. If you don't want any one of those, you can directly go to this place. You can just remove them, uninstall them, and then save it. And then as you can see right here, compared to whatever projects that we have implemented earlier, there are some new components that you can find. What are they? So there is a folder called Framework, and also there are some other folders that you can see right here. Exception, screenshot. Let me come from the start. I'll try to take you through some main components of RE framework which we very frequently use. One among that is this data folder, where you will be having a configuration file. What exactly do you mean by configuration file? Configuration file is nothing but, as we have already discussed, through this file we'll be able to provide the bot with dynamic data. Okay, if there is a folder from which you have to access any input files, it might change from development environment to production environment to UAT environments, right? So maybe today the folder is Sharath, tomorrow the folder can be David, or day after tomorrow the folder can be Jim. So based on this configuration, we can set that without making a single change to the code. And if we are working on a particular URL maybe today, so the URL might change tomorrow. So that can also be handled by just giving web URL and just giving some name here, www, maybe just for now google.com, and tomorrow it can be yahoo.com. Sorry, it can be yahoo.com. So that's what. So this easy it can be if you start using the configuration file. So that is where the UiPath has thought of providing it, and we have it at our fingertips. And then you can see there are different sheets that you can find right here. One is settings, constants, and assets. The main agenda of this will be soon looking at. Just for now, there are different values that this configuration will come with. Max retry number, it will allow the bot to run that many times, maybe as I have already discussed. If we have maybe a bank creation process, it can't happen in a single try, right? Maybe if sometimes the portal goes down, he had to try twice, thrice, maybe at a particular specific time. So that is what this indicates. And few applications take maybe 10 seconds, but few end up taking an hour. So that configuration can also be made right here. Okay, you can just start giving out timeouts. Timeout for Facebook can be something like 20 minutes kind of thing. And then based on that, you can start giving all those particular values. And this is a particular path where your screenshots will be saved. If I just minimize it, this is the folder. Even this you can make it as configurable. And after that, assets means nothing, but if you have your credentials, okay, where can you save them? So if you can't be saving that in a text file, maybe on your local machine, right? You want it to be secured. So that's where you can take the help of orchestrator. Orchestrator is a product given by UiPath, which we'll be soon looking at. So there you can start saving your credentials, which is very secured. For that purpose, we'll be using this. And then moving ahead, there's a documentation available. You can, in any case, if you don't understand what component is for what, like, then you can just go through this. It's a detailed documentation of RE framework. I definitely recommend you to go through this to understand why these components are built and what is their use. And once that is done, the next thing is screenshots. So whenever there is a failure, this whole things will be saved, this particular screenshots, right? Whenever, at least when you as a human face some errors, you will try to take a screenshot of it and then mail to someone else so that they can have a look at it and resolve that issue. It's same with UiPath. It will take some screenshots and save it right here. So it will just make a project organized. You have only a screenshot of this particular process in a kind of a folder. And then comes framework. What does this framework mean? As I was talking about reusability, there are a lot of components that comes along with framework that can be directly used. It's a kind of plug and play type. You can use this particular XAML in case if you want to close any opened applications, soft close kind of thing. And then this is used as a watchman, as I was talking about. So it will allow the records to come through the system one by one. And then this is a place where you will launch your applications. And this is a place where you will actually read the configuration file, because everything that you have in the configuration file has to be read. So this is what will happen here. And then comes kill all processes. So it will just close any file open. Okay, if you are unable to close it softly, you will just end up using this particular thing. And process is the main heart of this particular RE framework, where you will have all the things going on. We can just take the example of account creation. Here is where he will take the files and do all the manipulations, all the checks needed, and all the signatures needed and everything. And this is take a screenshot, and this comes handy when we are working with queues. And then this is for test cases. And then we have main.XAML, which actually we have gone through. And then we have a project.json. So this was about RE framework. And as I was showing you in the presentation, this is how the main page of RE framework looks like. This is the initialization stage, this is the get transaction stage, and this is process transaction stage, and this is end process. So are you able to get the things on this particular screen? Because you have already seen them and you know what is the benefit of them and what is their functionality. So I hope it represents the one that I have shown you earlier. And in the next lectures, we will try to dissect each one of them, at least have a walkthrough into each of these components. Now, let's start exploring the initialization state. So this is the one that we will be going to dissect maybe to know its components internally. So this particular thing is known as state. Let me show you what exactly is a state. If I just type state here, you'll find there are different components under state machine. Okay, one is state, one is final state, and state machine. So what exactly is the use of state? You might have gone through the usages of sequence flowchart that we have with us. Right here, if I go, you have sequence, flowchart, state machine, global handler, and workflow. So there is a complexity involved here. Sequence is something where you will have all the activities in the sequence. Suppose you are, maybe for example, you're just going to a movie. Okay, you go to movie and there's only one movie around your city, so you'll go only to one movie, right? There is no choices. So suppose you have maybe 3 movies playing in the theater, you have choices then. So you can go to movie 1, you can go to movie 2, or you can go to movie 3. So in that case, flowchart is good because you will be able to well organize it, and because you actually need a decision to be taken. But the need for state machine comes up when you have a lot of possibilities, more than 3 maybe, or more than 100. In this case, the manageability becomes very easy in case of state machines. So that is what you're able to see here. Okay, there is a transition going here, there is a transition going here, and there is a transition going here, kind of thing. But here if you see, this is the flow chart actually, and there is only one way of outcome. But here you can have n number of outcomes. If I'm just hovering over here, right, you're able to see a lot of points right here. As you can see, you can create this many kind of transitions out of this particular component. So that's where we find the benefit of state machine here. This is where we will find this particular state machine helpful. As you can see, the project that we might be implementing can be as complex as it can. So in that case, having this facility will definitely help us. Let's get inside this. But first thing that I would like to let you know here is initialization is mostly about reading the configuration file and initializing the applications that will be used in the process further. I'll just go inside this, and for any state that we use as this, there will be an entry point, and let me go down here, and there will be an exit point here, which are nothing but transitions. Okay, yeah, starting from here, this is the entry and we are inside this, and we have a component called try. What do you mean by try? You can just go type try here, and you'll be able to see something called error handling, and under that we have try catch. What does it actually says? Contains activities to be executed by the workflow runtime in an exception handling block. There are a lot of situations in real time where the bot wouldn't be able to perform something due to some exceptions, maybe an unknown exception or a business exception or anything in that case. So just to handle that, so that the bot doesn't terminate immediately, okay, we want to take the control of bot, right? So that's where we use try catch. So that is the purpose why we have used try catch here also. And then we have an assign which says system exception is nothing. So anytime, right, anytime when you're trying to execute something, we make everything 0 or to its initial stage so that we have them empty. Okay, and then populate those particular variables with whatever is needed. So that's where we are doing it, this particular thing called system exception to nothing. System exception will be of type, as you can see, exception system.exception. Okay, all these variables will be created by default. You just have to start using them. And the next one is config is nothing. So first time, right, all this particular process is being executed, we have to read the configuration file that we were talking about, this one. This we have to read, and we have to read this only once. We don't have to read it for maybe 10 transactions that we have. So that's where this condition is written. If this configuration file is nothing, then only it is going to the block, this then block. Else, if we already have some data in config, we never go into it. It simply means that. Then we have a log message. Then we have a log message saying the primary screen resolution is whatever right now, just to, because this option has been created recently because there have been a lot of issues coming up regarding the screen resolution, so they have just kept it. You don't have to change anything or do anything about it. And then we have a XAML file called init all settings. If I just move back and this to this project panel, I'll find there is a XAML which we have got with the RE framework called init all settings. They have just dragged this. Okay, this is what they have done. You can just delete it. So here, this, what it will do is it will try to read the configuration file. That is the only purpose of the XAML. If I just go inside it, before that I'll just show you the arguments. So this particular workflow takes some arguments, which is nothing but the path of the configuration file, the sheets it has to read, which is settings and constants for us. Maybe we can add some other sheets also if you want, sheet 1, sheet 2 kind of thing. And okay, and let me go through it. Yeah, the first thing that it is saying is it has a log message in which it has initializing settings, and then there is an assign. Okay, what does this mean? Out config. Config is a variable of type dictionary. If I just go right here to just click somewhere, it's not coming up because this out r in indicates it's a argument. So I have to go here. It's a dictionary of kind string and object. So these are key and value pair. If you are not familiar with dictionary, I have this particular explanation in the interview section, questions 2. Else you can just Google it and you will find dictionary is a type of class available in .NET which will allow you to actually save 2 values. Yeah, so this we have created, and we, in the sense the UiPath RE framework, already comes with them. And then it is initialized. So this is how you initialize something. And then there is a for each. So in config sheets is nothing but we have given a list of, an array of settings and constants. This particular sheets we want to read, so it is going inside it, and first time it will have settings, this particular value. So this settings will go here, and this read range will read the first sheet, which is settings. It will get all these values, name and value. So this will be key for us. If you just give web URL, you will get this URL. So this all we will be soon looking at. Don't be confused. This video is just to get you familiar with how it looks and what are its basic functionalities. And then going forward, we have a for each where it is adding all this particular values, whatever we have read, right, the key and value pairs, it is adding it to this particular dictionary. And after that we have assets. So we have a separate workflow, a sequence for this particular thing, because assets we read it differently than settings or constant page. So once this is done, so there is nothing more, we come back here, and by the end of this workflow we would have read all the things, all the values or all the keys or all the assets that we have with us in the configuration sheet. And then comes this particular sequence. It is nothing but I don't think you actually need it right here. Let me ignore that. This also you can ignore. This we will soon learn when we try to explore the orchestrator. Okay. And then kill all processes. The main use of this, as we have seen, this particular thing is nothing but it will help you keep your environment clean. Suppose the bot is supposed to open maybe Facebook and send some messages to your friends. For that, it would be very good if we can clear up the environment, if we close all the instances that we have opened earlier, so that the bot will be able to do it in a neat manner. So that's where this kill all processes comes into picture. You can use this XAML and kill all the applications that are already opened. And then this is a log activity that we can see. It will add the business process name to the logs. And then we have max consecutive system exceptions exceeded. So this is also an advanced thing for you maybe at this point of time, so you can just ignore it. And then comes the final one, init all applications. So this is where you will actually open your applications. Maybe if you're planning to work on Facebook, you just try to launch the application right here, so that you know if it's working or there is any server down issues. So moving back to main, so this is what it was. So these are few of the XAMLs that we'll be using from the RE framework to implement our project. So any error that occurs right here will go into this exception and will be assigned to system exception. I'll just show you. At the last, right, you can see there are transitions. If this whole thing that we were doing till now is successful, it will move to this particular state. Else, if there is any system exception, maybe the configuration file itself was not there, it will be a system exception and will go to end process. Or if we are unable to open the application like Facebook here, will not be able to process further, so we go to end process. As we can see here, if there is any system exception, we are moving to this. If this particular thing is very well and there were no issues, then we move on to the next state called get transaction data. So that was about initialization state, and hope you have understood it well. At least you were able to get yourself familiar with this particular state. And now we will try to have a look at get transaction data state. So what exactly is it? As we have actually defined it as a watchman, which will try to send each transaction one by one to the main process here, which is process transaction. Let's get inside it. The first thing that we can see is entry point, which is almost similar as initialization state, right? And there will be an exit point here. As you can see, there are few transitions from this to the other states. Then as soon as I go right here, you can just have a look at this summary available. So it will just tell you what is it doing exactly right here at this particular point of time. So this particular information will give you a good summary about what is what. And then the first activity that we encounter when we try to dissect get transaction data is check stop signal. So suppose I have a watchman or a guard who is actually responsible to send persons inside the counter by checking them for the maybe some necessary documents or some something related to production or anything. So there I have to tell him, in case if I'm running out of time or if my particular machine isn't working, the portals that I was talking about, then I should tell him that don't send any other person until this is fixed. Or maybe I'm running out of time and I have some meeting to attend. So please don't send any person from this particular time. So this is something which we can relate to. So this is a point where this particular thing is decided, that no more transactions will be sent to process. So here this value we will get it from the orchestrator. Orchestrator, don't be confused about it. It's a product from UiPath which will help us monitor the robots. Okay, it will allow us to stop robots, run robots, manage the licenses, and schedule the robots and all these things. So from there we can send this particular command to stop this particular process or the bot. If we actually, so it's nothing but a button over there. If you just click on stop button, this will be executed. So based on that command, it will either have true or false. Suppose we have clicked on the stop button, so this should stop here. It is nothing but a boolean type, so it will be set to true. So once this is true, it will try to go to this particular flow, which is then. If this condition is true, then it will go to this. We'll have a log message saying stop process requested, and the transaction item will be set to nothing. What is this transaction item? You can see it is of type queue item. So queue item, this is a kind of component or a functionality that we have from the orchestrator itself again. Okay, don't be worried about it. What is queue item and how does it exactly looks like, or how to create it, how to work it. Soon when we try to explore orchestrator, we'll definitely go through it. So this will be set to nothing, and if you just come a bit the bottom, you'll find there's this particular transition which says no data. What exactly is it? Let me click on this. It says if transaction item is nothing, then go to end process. What is this end process? It is nothing but this particular state. So directly from this, it is going to this and the bot will stop. So that is what is happening, right? So if some bank officer says that he's running out of time or he's very busy with the meetings and he don't want to take up any customer's query, then he can tell watchman and he will just stop allowing the users to go into the cabin or the counter. So that is what will happen. If not, okay, if bank officer is available and he is ready to take up the customer queries, then he can allow the new customer to go into the counter. So this is what we can actually visualize with this. If this is not true, if we have not sent the command to stop in the orchestrator, we will go to the else part because this will be false. So this particular thing will be executed. Again, this is inside try catch. As we know, try catch is used to handle any unknown exceptions or any exceptions that we actually want to handle. So let's get inside this particular XAML. And the other thing, so there are some arguments that we are actually passing to this particular XAML. What are they exactly? As you can see, there are some arguments with in direction and some are there with out direction, and there is one with in and out. For now, you can consider an argument as something that you're trying to pass from one particular XAML to another XAML. Here for us it's main. From main we are trying to pass a particular value into this another XAML by using arguments. Okay, and in is nothing but you're sending some input and you're getting some output out of this particular XAML. And there is another argument you can see which has in and out both, right? So here what is happening is you're sending a variable with maybe xyz value, and after some manipulations it is coming out with a abc value maybe. So this is what is happening. We are sending transaction number. Transaction number represents, suppose you have 10 transactions, maybe 10 records in your Excel sheet, or 10 mails in your inbox. So each one of them represents a transaction number. Got it right? Yeah, if there are 10 records, you will be incrementing the transaction number from 1 to 10, kind of thing. Okay, and then you have configuration file, as we have discussed, through which you will be able to get the values, which are URL, maybe email ID, assets, credentials, and all those things. And then you have a transaction item coming out of this particular XAML. Let's go inside it and have a look at it. As you can see, there's a short summary about this particular XAML. It says it is capable of handling any input source like queues, spreadsheets, databases, mailboxes, and APIs. It can be fit into any of this particular get transaction data. But definitely there is a need for you to make some modifications so that it suits for your particular requirement. Let's get into the default one. Here you can see there is an log message saying get the transaction item. Let me go inside it. As you can see, there is a activity called get transaction item. Okay, what exactly it is taking up? It is taking up few of the inputs. It is taking up the queue name of it and the folder of the queue. Okay, from where exactly we have to get the items. So this activity we will be definitely exploring it soon. For now, you can understand that get transaction item is an activity that will get us some new items to process. So this is what is happening here. And then whatever will be fetched out of this particular thing will be assigned to transaction item. Suppose there is a queue item. Maybe if you are completely new to UiPath, right, you will not be able to understand what is a queue item, how exactly does it look like. Queue item is nothing but a particular entry in the orchestrator which will have some data. Maybe you are a student in a class, then you have a roll number, okay, and you have your major which you have chosen, maybe electronics or computer science, whatever. So it defines you as a person. I can just package you and send it to maybe some university for the exam, right? So such type of, then in this case you are an entry in the college. So like that, every entry has different details to it, different attributes to it. Like first queue item might have Sharath and the country as India and maybe some other details, right? So in that case, you will have all those details packaged into a queue item. So this will be given to this particular transaction item, as you can see. And then there's a condition right here which says if transaction item is not nothing, then only go to this particular thing. Okay, else you will have transaction item as nothing anyway, right? So in this case, it will come out of this. It will go right here as transaction item is nothing. It will go here and end, because this is what happened, right? When you go to bank and there is no customer coming up, definitely the counter will be closed and the bank officer might get involved into some other work. And in case if we have a customer who needs some service to be provided, then we'll go ahead and do whatever is required for him, right? So that is what is happening here. We are just taking the ID, maybe we are taking a variable which has the current time, okay, now.toString, and we are just leaving them behind. And because we already have this variable a value assigned to it. We are just sending it to this particular thing. It will come out here, and if I just click here, right, you will have transaction is not nothing, then go to process transaction. This is what will take us to the next step here, which is process transaction. So these are some transitions that you should be aware of. Just take this particular case, okay, try to go to your UiPath and try to create one project with this particular template and try to explore a bit along with me so that you understand it really better. In case if you have any queries, try to click on this particular transitions and have a look at it. And yeah, that was all about get transaction data. Now let's get into the process transaction state. So this is the main heart of the RE framework, where we will have everything important into this particular process transaction. Before we jump into the process transaction, we have a small summary written here which will give you a good idea about what is process transaction. Okay, process a single transaction, which means it will be able to process one transaction at a time, and the results of this can be success, business exception, or system exception. So suppose a person comes into the counter for the creation of bank account. One thing is he might have got all the documents needed and it will be a success case. He will be able to create an account successfully and then leave the bank. The other one can be a business exception. Business exception is where he might not be having a document which is actually required by the bank. So in that case, he has to go back to home maybe again and get those documents tomorrow. In this case, this is a business exception. Okay, and then comes system exception. System exception is like the portal that the bank officer was working with has gone down, and so we will just try to relaunch it once, twice, or thrice, and even if it doesn't happen, then we will just stop the bot. So that is how we can define a system exception. So these are few things that will be handled in this particular state. Okay, here also the first thing that we can find is entry, and if you just drag it down, you'll find exit. And as you can see, there are 3 exits available here. This is system exception, business exception, and success. If I can just separate them a bit. Yeah, so if this particular account creation in case is successful, then this particular get transaction data will send a new customer into the counter or the cabin of the bank officer. Else, if the person didn't get the documents that were needed for him to open an account, then it will lead to business exception, and even in that case, right, a new customer will be allowed to pass through the counter because this existing customer will go home to get those required documents. But what if the application itself or the portal on which the bank officer was actually trying to create the bank accounts was down? Okay, it wasn't working. In that case, he will try to relaunch it, and if it was able to successfully launch, then it will go into get transaction data, and the new customer will be sent to process transaction again, else it will end the process. So this particular loop will repeat itself until all the customers are done, or till the point when the portal was working completely fine. So this is the loop that will happen, and we have 3 outcomes out of process transaction. Let me go into this. As you can see, we have business exception is equal to nothing. So suppose there is a person who has not got any documents. This particular reason was saved into this variable, the business exception variable. if I just go right here, this is the variable that is carrying that particular reason. So when I go and pick the next customer, that should be removed, right? So it is of no use to us. So we have to reset it. So that's where we are doing this particular activity. And then we have a XAML given to us by the RE framework. Let's open this and we find there is nothing. So it was just given to us so that we can write the steps needed for us. Suppose logging into the web portal, giving the credentials, and then searching for the user. All these things can go right here. You can just drag these activities that are available to you and start implementing it. So this will never have anything in it, so it's all on us to implement it. And then moving back, the next thing that you can find is set transaction status. So this is where the final output will go into. Suppose you are responsible to send an email when the bank account creation is done. In this case, this particular XAML will take care of that particular activity of sending a notification to the user. Or else, if you are maybe working with some application and after the successful creation of the account, you have to update it with a status saying it was successful. It can be anything, maybe writing it back to Excel, writing it back to database, or writing it back to queue items in orchestrator, anything. That whole thing will happen in this particular XAML. There are some arguments it will be given and some output arguments that comes out of it, like retry. I have told you, right? If it's a system exception, if the portal is down, then we will try to rerun it for maybe 3 times, 4 times as per the business requirement. And this is transaction number. So as the transactions are successful, we'll try to increment this particular argument or variable, okay, as it is of int type. So let me take you through this particular XAML. I'll open this and you can find a small short summary about what exactly is this set transaction status. Okay, this is what I have just explained you, that there are 3 flows. One is success, business exception, and system exception. And this is where you will go to another transaction. This particular sequence right here will handle the moving mechanism. It will increment the transaction so that you can move to the next customer or next queue item. And then I'll just try to take you through this particular sequence too. Here there's some checks that we do. If the transaction item is not nothing and it is of type queue item, then only we are going inside. So this is something that you'll soon understand later in the future lectures. And then we have an activity called set transaction status. So this will actually help us set the status of that particular queue item. So whatever we are able to fetch it from this, right, to the same queue item, will write back the data. In this case, because for us the input is queue, we have this activity. If it was maybe a SharePoint to you, then you might have some other activity to update the SharePoint status. In that case, you will use HTTP activities. So you have to get them from manage packages. Okay, and if it was just kind of you just want to send an email, so in that case also you can place the email right here. So that is what we can do depending on our requirement. I don't have them installed right here, so you didn't get that particular option. As you can see, there is no activity for mail. We have to download it by going through this particular option. This thing you can install it, fine. And then it's the same with business exceptions. For business exceptions, we will try to update the queue item with failure. As you can see, there will be a failure message set to that. So whatever reason that we have will be saved into business exception and we are sending the same to queue. And then we are doing everything that is needed, the logging part of it. And it's the same with system exception. Here we take the screenshot because system exception can happen because of any reason, right? Maybe it can happen at the login page, or it can happen at the logout page, or it can also happen while you're processing the data. This is something that I have just discussed with you, where a system exception has to be retried because maybe relaunching it for a few times might give us good results. Maybe if application is not working, we actually as humans try to close the application or close the browser and try to again access it by giving some time gap in between. So that is what we'll be trying to do through this particular XAMLs. And that was about this process transaction. Now the last state that we are left with is end process. So this is actually a bit different from the other ones. I'll just show you the difference of this. As you can see, there are three things that we can use, and this corresponds to this, and the end process actually represents the final state. This is a bit different from the others. As you can see, there are incoming transitions and there are outgoing transitions for the state, but as we can see, there is only incoming for this particular end process. So there will be only entry point and there is no exit point for this particular thing. So that is what we can observe, because this is the end stage that we have in the complete RE framework. So we don't require this state here. We just want to stop it in case if it reaches that particular stage. So this is why we use the final state. Yeah, it says that end process and close all applications used. So this is the only application of this end process. If we find that there are no customers coming up for the account creation, we end the process, we close the day. Similar to that, if we have no transactions or no records in the Excel to process, or no queue items in the queue, or no mails in the inbox, then we just stop the process. So this is what we are doing here. We try to close all the applications which were opened during the process, and if this doesn't work out, we try to kill them. So it is a soft kill kind of thing. You log out or you do something of that kind by using this activities right here. If it's an application, then you use close application. If it's a tab, then you use close tab. Just indicate whatever tab we want and then close window. So this will help you close those applications, and even then if you find it is not able to close those applications, then we use the kill activities right here, which will help us kill those applications which we were unable to soft close. You can use kill process here to perform that particular activity if needed right here. So that is the application of end process. And if you want to send out an email also, in case if the process stops, just to notify an user that the bot has processed the items and it has been stopped, that particular thing also you can do from this particular state. I'm just because I don't have mail activities, I'm just taking a click activity. You can just drag it right here and you can try to draft an email, okay, in the body and send it out to anyone who is responsible for that particular process. So he might receive an mail regarding the bot execution, regarding the bot status. So this is a simple state that we had where we will actually close up all the things and then send a notification if required. So that actually explains the RE framework in totality. So it starts with this, it goes through this, and then this, and if something happens at any of these stages, it will go and stop right here. So that was about RE framework, just try to understand the skeleton for now. That is the only agenda for this lecture, that you understand what is what, a basic understanding. It would be really great if you even understand 10% of whatever I have taught you from the start to the end, because I understand that it's a complex structure for someone who is trying to learn it for the first time. So that's where I recommend you to go through this particular thing at least twice, so that you understand the concepts of, these are the only things that you have to understand. Rest everything you can easily be able to understand it. Okay, if you just understand this basic higher level concept of RE framework, it would be definitely easy for you to understand when we try to implement a particular process using RE framework.